Welcome back to forecourttech podcast. I'm delighted to have two incredible speakers with me today from Scheidt and Bachmann. They are the CEO, Jörg Heilingbrunner, and also Ralph Mahnke. So first of all, welcome. Ralph, you're the business director of e-mobility and AI, but Jörg, I should really start with you first as the CEO. Just tell us a little bit about your background and your company.
Well, thank you, Ralph, for having us today in that podcast for forecourttech. Well, I'm the CEO, as you mentioned, of the energy retail solutions within the Scheidt and Bachmann company, which is a company being present in the mobility sector, and we are on the market for more than 150 years. We are based close to Düsseldorf in Germany, and I'm personally, my background is both a commercial and a technical sector. So I'm combining these aspects, and my desire is to be very curious and to think out of the box. And I think that's very important to manage the changes and the disruptions we are facing within our industry in the last couple of months and years, and what's coming up in the next years.
Well, I'm really looking forward to talking to you about disruption because there's a lot going on, probably more than there ever has been. But Ralph, can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by e-mobility and AI? What kind of things are you focused on?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having us, Ralph. So e-mobility is clearly one of the electrification elements in mobility going forward in many European and other countries, which is triggered by all known climate change. And to make it successful, I think merging technology trends, modern technology trends like AI into building products and solutions for the benefit of the customers and for the benefit of the merchants is just the center of our activity. And I joined Scheidt and Bachmann just the beginning of this year for this role, but I have a long history. I worked before in a major global energy company, in fact, in the oil and gas business. I have experience in many forecourts and site system deployment all over the world. And the last 3 years, I focused on e-mobility as the CTO for e-mobility in that company and digital solutions. So I think the transition is part of my daily work.
Let's delve into some of the areas on the forecourt. So starting with the convenience area, convenience retail, what do you see at the moment are the most important trends?
Well, what we do see is, as Ralph just mentioned it, that the energy transformation is taking place. And that means that due to the large or the number of increasing BEV, battery electric vehicles, the consumption of fossil fuel is steadily declining. So what is the option now for the operators? The option is to increase the convenience aspects, the convenience services on a fuel retail side, and within the fuel retail business and then the convenience business, food is taking a major role. So the so-called foodvenience is a major trend which will grow in the next couple of years in order to compensate the losses in the fossil fuel business.
Yeah, it's interesting about food because we were talking to another German, Frederick from Q1, and he was saying that he's trying to focus both on autonomous stores but also on fresh food, which I find quite interesting because traditionally, I think some of the food, certainly in the UK where I live, has not been perhaps so fresh in convenience stores on the forecourt. But I think there's a sort of general move towards trying to give more value to the customer, particularly if they're spending more time on the forecourt because they're charging their EV. I mean, are you seeing any radical changes to how people behave on the forecourt?
Yes, I do. The reason is that the dwell time is a different one. So on the forecourt in itself, right? If you had to fill up your car, it was a rather more short stop. Well, during charging, you have a longer stop. That leads to a different behavior. And it also leads to a different setup of technology and forecourts in itself, honestly, because nobody wants to just spend time waiting. So one thing is if you're on the go, you're trying to reduce the dwell time, and then you want to have high power chargers, and then you want to just combine it with a break as everybody wants when you have a break on a long distance trip. But if you are not on a long distance trip, but rather more in another area, then the dwell time is to be either in a mall or being at work or do something else, right? And then the charging and the forecourt of charging is merging into traditional parking environment. It's merging into other workplace environment. And that changes quite a bit. So forecourts and themselves are not the forecourts of the past. And that's, I think, to be recognized in all technology which we offer for the merchants and for the customers. I think that's in general, and we may deep dive into some of the aspects in the future, but that's clearly a difference.
Companies like Shell are rolling out forecourts where you've got EV chargers on one side of the forecourt, you've got the traditional gas or petrol pumps where they always were, and then you've got the store, the convenience store. But we're also seeing sort of newer EV only forecourts, which I think it's fair to say been a little bit of an experiment, but I can think of 2 or 3 around where I live. So there's people trying different things to see what works. What have you seen that you think, oh, that's really interesting?
Well, I think what you will see that the classical fuel retail side will will develop, will evolve into various formats, and we have been doing some investigations and also supported by a company called BCG, and they have seen 4 different formats. So on the one hand side, the one extreme is the mobility hub, offering various, let's say, alternative solutions in terms of energies. So starting with fossil fuels being added by e-mobility and maybe H2 or others. So, and then on the other side, on the other extreme, you have, let's say, the autonomous, the unmanned sides, which only, let's say, offer fossil fuels and they have no shops, only, let's say, autonomously operated stores. And there are other formats. So there will be, let's say, a differentiation within our industry, but it will definitely be influenced significantly by the EV charging in the next couple of years.
I wonder as well with that AI sign behind you, Ralph, if you're watching the video version of this, what role does AI and data play in all of this? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'll try to build a little story around that. And for those who are not watching, but only listening in the podcast, what Ralph is referring to is also my background, where we have a slogan which is said, we are building AI into retail, and the AI and retail is the same color as the AI, which is actually trying to just synthesize what we are doing. That is merging the technology, so the capabilities of AI into the solution. Now, why do we do that? I think we do that um, for making our products future proof, for being able to respond to the, I think, smaller margin business. And why, let me explain in a few sentences why that is the case, right? So if you have a classical forecourt, if you have a classical gas station, and I saw those, you are dependent on the country, but it's more or less the same. You have about between 900 and 1,200 customers per day. So you get a lot of small transactions with a large revenue. Well, tax is being taken away, obviously, as well, very often. Um, and your equipment and your assets, be it the assets in the shop, be it the resources you have, be it the pumps are used quite often, and you can distribute your asset costs. Now, if you're running a forecourt of just EV chargers, so one of the formats which um, autonomous charging is, as you referred to, Ralph, and Jörg was alluding to, as one of the formats, right? then because of the dwell time, you don't have that number of customers. Never, ever will you be able to really get back of what you got back in the normal forecourt. And to take that into account means that the pure EV charging hubs, if you see them, they are all unmanned because you're already not able to really earn back your labor costs. Now, the next challenge which we see happening is that the charge point operators or energy companies, as you say, like BP or Shell or Total, some of those large players, when they add charging to their energy mix as well, they want to make technology work for them in a smarter way. And what else can you do than to use the most modern and most efficient ways of AI also to build the technology and solutions out in a way that they are more intelligent, right? They help the customer more, they increase the utilization more. And so coming back to the story, it's all about the margin business. And if you don't scale up the single site as much, then I think it's the need to bring modern technology into the edge as well. And that's, I think, the short answer to your question of why we merge that also from our end.
That's a really interesting point that you make. So potentially less people coming through, but higher value, dwelling longer. So the opportunity to sell them things that they need. I mean, are you able to tell us about any of the trends that you're seeing from the data that you're analyzing at the moment?
We see an era in which data is of more value than features than it was 5 years ago when features were of more value than data, right? And so analyzing it and then responding to it gives us a good trend. So maybe I take two out of the mix. One is reliability. If you have an unmanned forecourt, your reliability is not like observing by a service champion on the forecourt if something is working or broken. No, you need sensors on the forecourt which tell you that there's some anomaly on your forecourt. And so the data streams for understanding, you have to do a service on the forecourt that helps. And honestly, some of the disappointments which we see from early adopters on EV drivers when they found charging areas which wouldn't work have to do with the fact that there wasn't enough censorship. And we see that reliability can be improved by those real-time data streams as well. And the second has to do with personalization. And we have some products which we have already in the market and others we are working for, where we are trying to help with the personalization to make the convenient stores and the charging in a combined way more helpful for merchants as well. So we feed those kind of data. And it could be in pricing, it could be in other areas as well, but I don't want to dwell on too enough. But these are hopefully good explanations of what we see, where data streams are helping and the trends are clearly in these directions.
I mean, I'm very familiar with the UK and the Irish markets. And I think for both of those, there are electricity tariffs that mean I can charge my car cheaper overnight. It's hugely popular, certainly in the UK, to have those kind of tariffs if you've got solar panels or if you just want to use electricity from the grid network. Are you seeing that kind of tech come in as well? So if I go and charge my car, I don't know, midnight or early hours of the morning, if I'm crazy enough to do that, then it's a bit cheaper for me, or are things not really changing yet in that regard?
Well, I think at that stage, I think you mentioned a very important topic, Ralph, is the market is not fully developed in terms of transparency, in terms of price signs, and it's still what you can see that prices are still very high in various areas, and it's not very obvious for the customer to identify the best price, as we do see that for example, for fuel. You have apps and you can compare the best prices. So there's still a potential, and we do see that customers start on dynamic pricing in terms of e-mobility prices. And the other topic is that we we will use AI for this topic. Apart from this, we do see that there is also a vehicle to grid development, so that you can use your car as a let's say as a battery, and you can use a solar panel energy, and have it, let's say, an autonomous consumption at your home. So there's different use cases which will develop in the future, and they will be combined by the industries, and also the car manufacturers play a very significant role in that business.
And when you're looking around the countries that you operate in, where are some of the most innovative things happening? And I'll give you an example. When I was talking to Christian Warning, actually, he was saying that Ireland is really innovative for fresh food in the convenience store area. So if there was one country who was going to look at what they were doing for fresh food, it would be Ireland. Interestingly, he never mentioned the UK in any of his discussion, but what other interesting projects have you seen, and which countries are kind of leading the way, or are we all kind of at the same point trying to figure this out?
Well, maybe just highlighting different sectors. So in regard to EV charging, e-mobility, the Nordic countries are really the leader of the pack. So especially in Norway, almost 96% of the newly registered cars are battery electric vehicles. So there are actually no new, or hardly no new, fossil cars. So I think they are leading in terms of the electrification, and we can learn from them in terms of customer journeys. And this is, I think it's a very, very important topic on how to manage these sites, and how to manage the customer journey in the future for all other countries in Europe.
Yeah, I see also very diverse trends in the countries, right? Ireland was a good example because of fresh food. I would add Netherlands is one of the fresh food leaders as well, as I see that. UK, yes, because I think there is a traditional way of combining it also on the side. But there are other trends for convenience as well. We know from the past that location and price are the two which drove where to put a forecourt in a sustainable and in a very profitable way. I saw in Madrid, for instance, in Spain, that some of the charge hubs are built underground. And that has a number of additional advantages. One is about the heat, right? Second is about not consuming so much space. Thirdly, it was nice. You don't need to have a roof, right? Even you got a shadow automatically in there. There was good lighting as well. The safety was in there. So I think the climate conditions under which you operate play a role. And so I see different trends, right? Absolutely. We could talk about Switzerland. We can talk about Poland being in a different way, Belgium doing another direction than the Netherlands. So what we see in convenience and what we see in e-mobility is not so much a globalization. I mean, who would expect that? You had about 50 odd or more years to really standardize how a standard gas station forecourt looked like, right? We have just about 10 years behind us to find the experimentation of the format.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating time, isn't it, to be in the forecourt industry? And I love that picture that you painted around Europe. And of course, the forecourttech study tour is happening in Madrid. So you've very neatly described a future podcast episode that we'll be putting out as we go on that. Coming back to the energy transition, do you think I mean, if you were in Silicon Valley, you would say disruption is fantastic. That's why we're here. That's what venture capital funds. Do you think EV charging is complementing or just massively disrupting forecourts at the moment?
It's both. And why is it? So one of the things we have to take into account is the hard truth, right? So efficiency rates of battery electric cars are about 80 to 90%. Efficiency rate of internal combustion engine cars are about 28 to 29. So you need already less energy in electrification. And then if you are now taking the second thing into account, like you said, charging at home, charging in a different workplace location, then the forecourt utilization is normally for a site different as well. So absolutely disrupting, because you find a forecourt, you find a disruption just by the number of sites and the utilization of the site. It's also disrupting, and I come back to why it's complementing at a later point in time. It's also disrupting in terms of the players. If you look around the industry, apart from maybe less than a handful of players in Europe, you see a lot of startups in trying to be EMSPs, aggregators, roaming partners, payment providers, charge point operators, charging manufacturers, all these kind of players, and not to speak about the automotive OEM, which have different divisions, right? And the cars, which are more laptops than anything else. You see that disruption because it's not the same industry in which you see the solution coming off from. Well, Scheidt and Bachmann will be a survivor because we are not only trying, we are actively transforming our business and the products. Maybe at a later point in time, we can talk about that as well. Now, it is still complementing the forecourt as well. Why does it complement? As space in urban areas is scarce, space at corridors is scarce. So having in many, many countries charging as another option to like LNG or classical diesel uh, on the forecourt is complementing. Why? Because the convenience stores, which are near to it and normally in there, are an ideal combination. So charging is complementing on the forecourt, but it's disrupting in terms of utilization and technology.
I think it's number one, it's disruptive because we have been used to fuel retail sites for more than 100 years. That's where companies sold their fuel. And that's drastically changing because, as Ralph mentioned, now there are new competitors coming up and there are new locations because you can charge at home, you can charge at work, you can charge at retail sites. So while you charge, you do something else. So it's a co-use case. And the actual figures show that the charging at a fuel retail site is only about maybe 15 to 20% of the overall charging market. So they're coming up new, let's say, new opportunities. And that's why it's disruptive from the point of view of a fuel operator. On the other hand, as Ralph mentioned, it's also complementing because it offers opportunities for the existing providers. Of course, they have to change their business model. They have to define new revenue streams. And that's why I think it's, on the one hand side, I think it's more disruptive, but it's also a chance. And that's why it's complementing, let's say, the existing offerings of a fuel retail operator.
Well, I want to ask you as well about the competitive landscape. So, one of my experiences, and I was lucky enough to go to Norway and create a video about what they were doing. And you mentioned earlier, over 90% of newly registered cars in Norway are electric. I also spoke to some of the local people who were having issues with charging. I think particularly in national parks was one complaint. Not surprisingly, if you've been to Norway, it's a beautiful but very rugged country. I wasn't particularly surprised that maybe there aren't so many chargers in the middle of a national park. But it's incredible to see. I mean, certainly 2 years ago when I was there, every type of vehicle, there were electric versions. But when I think about the competitive landscape, certainly here in the UK, you have things like mobile apps. So if I need to charge, if I'm on that long distance journey, I can't charge at home because I'm going further away from my home. I'm probably going to either use an app on the car or an app on my mobile phone to find the nearest charger. And then it becomes about something Ralph was talking about earlier, which is reliability. So do I trust that if I go to a particular forecourt, the charger will be working, number one, because we've all had those stories where you have to drive somewhere else. You've only got 15 kilometers left on your car, and you're starting to panic. So there are those issues. But there's also an opportunity here, isn't there? Because if, for example, you said to me, well, you could go to this forecourt and you get a discount on your coffee, I might be the sort of person who I quite like coffee. I might do that kind of thing. So it's back to this question of data. And I just wondered if you've seen any innovative new business models or maybe some of the products and services that you're offering where you think, oh, that actually is a really interesting opportunity for the future.
Yes, I would like to home into Flomax.ai, which was one of the products we invented. And as you spoke about Norway, I also had a conversation with a CPO representative in Finland where you had queues in front of the parks as well. So there are at peak times, even in Germany or in France, I find like 4 chargers, and all 4 chargers on Friday afternoon are occupied. So we have developed an AI-based, data stream-based machine learning model with taking into account the number of factors, including charge curve and load behaviors of cars, and we predict when a charge bay is going to free up. And it's not only when the state of charge is 100% or 80%, it's taking into account location and weather and time of day and all those kind of things. And it can be displayed on a sign, like you have a primary on a gas station, right? Combined with your tariff and then a layout or a list of in 5 minutes or in 20 minutes, this charger will get free. And this is an opportunity to combine transparency about the price, information about the reliability, and maybe even advertisement on the sign. Now, we haven't stopped there, although we find already a number of CPOs who said that is absolutely a marvelous idea. And by the way, that's the Scheidt and Bachmann registered patent, by the way. But we have not only trying to do that, what we found out, and that was not in our first mind, but it came out immediately when we developed the product, was that the information to the app, to the Google Maps, to the Zap Map, to some of those you mentioned are to be improved. That's an opportunity. So today, what you see normally is you see there are 4 chargers. They have 50 or 150 kilowatt, and that's fine. And 2 of the 4 are free, or 3 of the 4 are occupied. And you still don't know how long they will be occupied. So our next opportunity for this AI solution is coming up with enriching that information for the drivers and for the charge point operators to make a more attractive view. So in fact, you're absolutely right, Ralph. The challenges which we have are built into opportunities. And that's a good example from my point of view.
Just to sum it up, that's what we have written down in our mission and vision statement, so that we really have this customer first approach in transforming and in supporting this energy transformation. Maybe what we do want is, let's say, that we really, as Scheid and Bachmann, are driving future mobility, that we're helping customers and operators to be successful in the market by the use of AI and having just use cases as Ralph mentioned. And we have others in our backlog, which we will develop in the next couple of months in order to offer them to our customers, and in order to provide better services to the EV charging customers. Because as you mentioned, there are range anxiety issues. There are, let's say, issues with the availability of chargers, and that needs to be improved. And that's what we are focusing on.
Assuming some forecourt operators are listening to this podcast, which I think they do, if you were talking to them about the opportunities that your products and services bring, which areas do you see actually having the most impact? So traditionally, we've got maintenance of the forecourt. We've got the convenience aspect. We now have e-mobility. So that might be membership services, discounts, loyalty. I mean, there's a whole raft of things that come on the back of that. But there's probably other areas as well. So if I'm sort of here thinking, well, I know I need to do something, what should I be looking at first?
So I'm trying to just approach this from the trend in which the energy transition is happening. So for until about a year or 2 years ago, we may have had first adopters. And now we find the followers, right? So you get more and more people which are not really interested into the technology. They are not nerds who want to have like 20 apps on their phone as well. They are not interested into the biochemical or the chemical processes of the battery in itself. They just want to be a good citizen, right? And help ourselves, the climate, the planet, and then get from A to B. And so one of the things you need to look at is simplification of customer journey. That is clearly one of the trends, and I will give you a second one in a moment. But simplification is just absolutely needed. And our industry, I think the whole industry is very good in designing product and not necessarily a simple experience. And that one, as a forecourt operator, I would always look at simple things like signs, good working environment, displays which have a good contrast, etc., etc. Those kind of simplifications, not so many steps to click on, and not too many dependencies on the app. And by the way, one of our products is PowerPay, which is a kiosk payment solution, and I know others have as well. But this kiosk payment solution, we look after, can we get the shortest possible touch point for the customer to simplify, because that will help the operators as well. I think the second one is interoperability. As a forecourt operator, you will not find the one technology provider who can deliver all of it to you, right? You will have to have a good ecosystem selection. And that's also something which we aim for, to build the right partnerships and then enable our customers, the merchants, the forecourt operators as well, to make more choices, right? As if you want to simplify and at the same point in time, you don't find the one partner only, then you at least don't want to live with the complexity and have an ecosystem who has prepared integration.
Yeah, maybe to add on this, Ralph, I think what is also important to understand the DNA of Scheidt and Bachmann. We have been in that market for a very long time, and we have been very experienced, very knowledgeable in payment and loyalty, and as you mentioned. So what we do is we just take these know-how, this knowledge, and transfer it into that new businesses in order to make the customer journey more seamless. And that's what Ralph mentioned, is that we apply this proven successful, let's say, models for this business, taking into consideration that the business is different, that the customer needs are different. But what we do see is that our knowledge is very much demanded by the new operators, because the knowledge is not existing in many of these companies, of these new entrants. And that's why our products are very well received, and we will expand that into the future.
Coming back to AI and the future, maybe just give us your predictions for the next year, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years. What changes do you see and what are you excited about for the future?
I'm excited about the fact that there is a transformation, and every transformation really give chances for new thinking, right? And these new thinking, independently of your gender, your location, your country, gives an opportunity for entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is what absolutely needed. And we know not all ideas would make it into the product. So we are trying some proof of concepts, and some of them will be in the product. Moving forward, what we have to take into account is that there will probably be more unmanned sites. And these unmanned sites come from, I mean, all the pure EV charging sites are already 100% unmanned, right? So you don't go to a charging hub and you have a service champion around there. if you have a combined one, then even labor cost may go into that direction. As well, that you may have even fuel sites which are unmanned. And this gives an opportunity for us, as I said before, to think some of the experiences which are traditionally driven into more of a Silicon Valley way or in an Asia way as well, where we have a lot of out-of-the-box thinking. And that's not what we usually have in Europe or UK, right? Out-of-the-box thinking is not so much our DNA. But taking those examples in the next 5 years, that drives me every day to the workplace as well. And I see this is the future of bringing, I think, the product into another evolution state. And we will have faster life cycle changes. If you think about dispensers of the past, right? When was there a new dispenser type, right? So every 20 years or so. No, we'll have products which are changing even every quarter. And that is, I think, the energizing part of the next years.
Yeah, I think it's, as you call it, an iPhone effect. What we have seen like 10, 12 years ago when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone. I think that will be another major step in let's say, in the evolutionary process. And we will do see that AI is affecting almost every task. And we try to identify, let's say, use cases in order to improve processes, but also to develop new business models for us and for our customers.
I'm excited about what the next few years will bring. I think we're seeing so much innovation already, and the fact that we're talking about how customers are changing, how that customer journey will change, and how hopefully all of these products and services from Scheidt and Bachmann will help smooth that transition, because it is a little bit confusing for the consumer as well. It's just really interesting to talk to you. So thank you both so much for coming on the Forecourt Tech podcast, and I look forward to seeing you at the Forecourt Tech conference. For those of you who are listening or watching on YouTube, if you're not able to attend the conference, we'll also be doing some news highlights from there, and hopefully speaking to Jörg or to Ralph at the show as well. But guys, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ralph, for having us.
Thank you. Goodbye.